Okay, you guys, I've got another tutorial for you today that I thought might be helpful for those of you out there that love stamping or love using stamps within your mixed media layers. And that is how I create my foam stamps. So just disclaimer, foam stamps are nothing new, but every time I share my homemade ones in a picture or in a class, that type of thing, I get so many questions. So today I'm gonna actually take you through how I do this. And this is something when I first started my business, oh my gosh, like over 10, 12 years ago, I actually used to make handmade foam stamps that I would sell, and I just could not keep up with what it took to do this, but I still these days, once in a while, create batches, and I love using these in my art because they have a lot of flexibility and give to them. So as many of you know, I work on canvas, I work on fabric, and I love foam because you're able to really get on top and squish it down really, really well to get a nice imprint of your design. So I'm gonna show you guys how I do this. It's really simple, really easy, and these guys last forever. I rarely wash them. They're really great for using with classes. So if you've got kids in your class or kids you're working with, they're really durable. They last forever, and you can use them in your art just over and over again. They don't take a lot of care. You don't have to wash them perfectly. And again, they last a really, really long time, really durable. So what I use are these sheets of foamies, and mine are 6 millimeter. So that is what I like, where it's 6 millimeters thick. So you've got a lot of, I don't know, you've got a lot of foam to work with. And I just start by cutting out my shape. I'm gonna go for like a Matisse inspired leaf. You can draw your design out. It can be small, it can be big. And I usually think in terms of something that I can repeat in surface design and pattern. So I like lots of organic shapes. I don't know, weird shapes. Rainbows are so trendy right now. I love like the rainbow design. I love circles, all that good stuff. But you can really have fun with those shapes. And then you can have fun with all the little pieces and all that like space that you have left over. I always turn these types of things into stamps too, because I can get some fun pattern. You do not need to have a contrasting color for your stamp sheets, but I just happen to have black on hand. And then you're gonna cut out like a base for your stamp. This is a pretty big one. And what I actually use to glue it down is my handy dandy glue gun. And I find this works the best to just glue your design down to the base. And there you've got a really simple stamp and a shape that you can use on a variety of different surfaces. So something else I like to do is actually carve into that foam with a heat tool. And I typically use a wood burning tool. This is actually something I don't do as much anymore just because you need to work in a well-ventilated area. It does produce a little bit of smoke when you burn into it, and I'm just not comfortable doing that too much anymore. But if you're working outside, if you've got a real good face mask or a ventilated area, this will work. But I'm just gonna show you guys real quick that if you can burn into that foam and see how you got some designs in there. And you can actually take it as far as like burning an entire design, details, that kind of thing. I'm gonna be honest, it takes some practice to actually create like a pattern. It's hard to get some curved lines. It's tricky to use a wood burning tool on just about anything, but you can alter that foam to get some designs, that type of thing. These days, I actually just stick to the simple shapes without carving designs into it, but there are a variety of different ways you can add details, you can cut out small, tiny shapes and elements, that type of thing. I like more simple shapes because I can work around them and fill them in on that surface. I'm actually gonna show you guys real quick what these look like once you load them up with paint and use them on a surface. Okay, so let's play around with a few of these stamps just so you guys can see what they look and feel like on a variety of surfaces. I've got a scrap piece of watercolor paper, I've got my paint palette, some of my stamps. To be perfectly honest with you guys, I love using these within layers. So these types of stamps do not lend themselves very well to perfection. Spoiler alert. I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to my art. They really lend themselves to being expressive and getting like these basic shapes and expressive color within layers. But again, what I love, you cannot tell by this video, but I am pushing this down really, really hard. And because it's foam, it's got a lot of give to it. So you're able to get a few different impressions out of that same layer of paint. And I like creating pattern on my surface. So I like to repeat things. I like to let things go off of the edge of something like that. So again, you load up your paint just with a brush on the surface of your stamp and just press it down. I'm pressing so hard, my table is cracking. This is what it looks like on paper. Okay, so that's kind of what that whole surface looks like on paper. And you're gonna notice, see how you're not gonna get something perfect. This does not feel like or look like rubber stamping with an ink pad. You can use ink pads with these. I just find they lend themselves to paint and fabric paints, that type of thing, where you can really glob that paint onto the surface of the stamp. So let me just show you a quick example in my art journal. This is my current art journal. I've working on the pages and I like going back into them and continuing to layer. And this is where I really like to get creative with stamping and just adding these different elements of layers. Messy layers is kind of what I'm all about. So I'm just gonna take my little rainbow stamp. I will still use some blue because it's kind of a nice contrast. I love adding stamps over the top of things. So some people out there might be going, oh, don't go over that picture, but it's what I like to do because I just like the element of layers, of just adding a unique element here and there to things and continuing to build layers over time. So sometimes when I'm working in my art journal, I'll just stamp in it and let it dry, and I'll come back to it like another day, maybe draw over those stamps or journal over my layers. So again, I like that I'm able to have a lot of give when I push down. I'm able to get just these really messy, nice impressions. Let's add one over here. I've got a mandala that I was drawing, and now I've got this stamp with kind of some imperfect details on it, but I'm just gonna get it loaded up with paint. There you've got just kind of a unique little element. I like going, again, right over the top of stuff. I know some people might go, why would you spend so much time on that drawing to cover it up? But honestly, you guys, it's what I'm always going for in these types of layers. Let's do one more. So again, the impression of the stamp is pretty subtle, nothing perfect, but I just love that push and pull between my watercolor background that I have going on behind this with some collage. Then I've drawn a mandala over the top, and then I stamp over the top. I'll let this dry, and then I'll keep drawing over the top of these stamped elements. Because they're imperfect, they really lend themselves to going back in with maybe my favorite pen or a brush and paint and kind of doing all kinds of details and embellishments over them. And then I've got my favorite surface to stamp on with foam stamps, and that is painted canvas. As you guys know, for many years, I love to paint canvas, rip it up, tear it up, cut it up, and turn it into different things. But what I'm always going for is probably about 2, 3, sometimes 4 layers that kind of have this push and pull with color, pattern, designs, journaling, images, all that good stuff. I will layer things on top of each other because I'm incredibly inspired by graffiti and those elements of just layers over time. So what I like to do with my foam stamps is actually use them as an element within my layers. So they're not typically the focal point of what I'm creating, but they are just one element as I begin to layer. And this is why I'm pushing so hard on this. This is why I really enjoy foam stamps, because there's a lot of things that don't work on thick canvas, especially thick canvas that has lots of layers. It's just really tricky when you want to start adding things. Stencils can be tricky. All kinds of stamps and things that make an impression can be tricky, but because you've got that foam, you can just push it down really, really hard and get a nice impression going on. And you guys can see that I can start to build kind of this interesting, unique design, this push and pull. So this is just gonna be one element in a canvas surface like this. Let's add a couple more. And you know, you can keep going with layers of stamps. I like to really think in contrast. If you guys take my online classes, you know that I'm always talking about contrast when you're adding elements to layers where things are gonna push and pull with color and contrast. So I might, you know, layer up my stamps here and there on a surface. But yeah, I thought it might be fun and helpful to show those of you that are interested in actually making your own stamps. Craft foam is a great material for doing it. It's great for kids. It's great for those of you, much like myself, that are messy, that just aren't really interested in getting perfect impressions of things. But you do like kind of repeating elements or creating really interesting surface design. And with using stamps, you can really have fun with it. So yeah, I hope that helps you guys, gives you a little bit of inspiration to maybe create your own stamps and mess around with layering and get messy with that paint.